Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, your niche navigator, coming to you live with a new guest on Munira's Musings. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Barry Mixon.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. So our guest, he's a gemological storyteller. And I want to know what that is, don't you? Well, before we start, let's talk about our show. Our show has the potential to take people on the next step to their journey. Because very often I have found people who have a lot of tools in their toolbox and are afraid to take the leap into what they are called to do. So what I do is I bring on different guests and we talk about how they found their niche so then we can take and push other people over the edge to take the next step in their life. If you like this, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to our channel because we are here with a new guest every single Monday. And we talk about niches. And you have to know niches are the way to riches, right? So without further ado, let's talk to Mr. Barry Mixon. Barry, you are a gemological storyteller. I know that you are a veteran, so thank you for your service.
You're very welcome.
And you serve the country, so again, what a wonderful thing. But how do you go from a veteran to a gemological storyteller?
Well, okay. Again, good morning. I'm originally from Harlem, New York. I joined the Marine Corps when I was United States Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. I spent 14 years in the Marine Corps. I got out of the Marine Corps. I went to college. I got 3 degrees in biology, chemistry, biochemistry. So I was basically a scientist. And different things happened in my life. And 28 years ago, literally, I moved to Chicago thinking I was going to go back to medical school because I was in the medical school for a minute before HMOs, PPOs decided I didn't want to be that type of doctor. I'm 60 years old, so I remember Marcus Welby, Dr. Kildare. That was the kind of doctor I wanted to be. But then it got to be about how much money you're making, how much you're charging, HMOs and PPOs. And I was like, no, that's not what Dr. Kildare used to do. So I left and I did I call my Kung Fu years, meaning like I just kind of traveled doing different things. And in 1992, living in Chicago, I was homeless. I was homeless for a year. I literally lived in the streets of Chicago. I didn't have friends and family here. I didn't want to move back to New York, kind of with my tail between my legs. So I literally survived on the streets for a year in Chicago. Different things happened. I became a Toastmaster and I met a person, my business partner, Cosette Barrett, who I was working at Bally's because I was using my science training. I was working at Bally's. I was a weight loss specialist for women and met Cosette. She was a jeweler. And one day she invited me to help her with one of her jewelry shows. So I was like, okay, I don't know anything. I'm from New York, but I knew nothing about gold and everything else. And the most amazing thing happened. The woman, it was at a law firm, we went there. The woman said something that I had never seen or heard before. She said, not that I like, not that I want, I need. She says, ooh, I need this. Ooh, I need this. Now, I was a specialist for weight loss. This woman definitely needed my work. I could have been selling her air. All she wanted was jewelry. And that's when I began to start thinking about the relationship between people and jewelry. And I went to the Gemmological Institute of America, Gemmological Association of Great Britain. I learned at Northwestern how to become an appraiser. And that's when the storytelling started coming. I started realizing that the thing that got me out of homelessness to where I was today was a story. And there was a little book that I have right here. It's called As a Man Thinketh. And it began the the kind of formulation of how important it is for people to be able to tell their own stories. And when you appraise a piece of jewelry, whether it be a gemstone, fine piece of jewelry, or precious metal, that what the appraisal is, it's a story. And it's only through that story that you get to value. So I created a company called the Gem Hunter, Gemmological Appraisals and Storytelling Services, art, science, history, magic, because I use the template of gemstones, of appraising a gemstone, to help people discover the value of their own stories.
Why is this so important? Why is the value of people's stories so important?
Because when I was homeless, I mean, I want you to understand, I was homeless for a whole year, starting in the winter of 1992, right here in Chicago. And even though I had 3 degrees in biology, chemistry, biochem, I had spent already 14 years in the Marine Corps, ribbons, medals, war hero. I'm living in a dumpster. I'm living in a dumpster. I'm eating out of garbage cans. And people walked right past me because I had no value to them. And the reason why I had no value is because they didn't know my story. They didn't know who I was. Part of the reason why I wound up being homeless was because I grew up in an alcoholic household. My mother basically told me that I wasn't going to be anything. So that was the story that was in my head. And I started really realizing that the only way people begin to understand their own value is they have to understand their story. I worked with veterans, and I had a gentleman who was about my age. He'd gone through a lot of things in his life. He's looking for a job, and he literally told the group, he says, I don't have anything. He says, I haven't had a job in years. I don't have no job skills. I have no job training. I have nothing. He says, I don't have references. I have nothing. I need help because I'm nobody. And I just thought how sad that is to get to the point in your life where you feel like you're nobody. And that's only because someone hasn't taken him back through his life and realized all the things that he had done in his life before getting to this point. What is his story? So when you appraise a gemstone, nothing has value without a story. So my purpose in life is to help people discover their value, because I think that's what's wrong with the world. We don't rather be racist things or racism or male, female or different. It's once we understand someone's value or their story, their value increases. So that's the main theme of what I do. And that's why instead of just being a gemologist or a jeweler, I'm a gemological storyteller, because I use the same concepts that I would to appraise a piece of gemstone on people.
Wow, right? Wow. So, but you're right. You know, over the years, as I started my coaching, I've learned that people have stories. People, and when I talk about my niche navigation, I talk about look into your core, right? What have you achieved? What skills have you acquired? And most people don't even think about that. They don't look within themselves, they're looking outside. And we try to change that, because as a coach, we try to get them to answer the questions that they are asking. And they have the answers, only they don't want to go into the deep, dark, murky waters, right? So when you talk about stories and you bring gemstones, when you look at a gemstone, it's gone through a process. How do people, how is that parallel to that?
Well, the thing I like about gemstones is that if I said rubies, diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, and pearls, even though you and I don't know each other, you're in Chicagoland area, but you could be on the other side of the world. And if I just met you, you could be in India. And I was just like, good morning. You say good morning to me. And I said, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and pearls. Even if you don't own one yourself, you know the value of that. And the only difference between you and this diamond If this was 100, if this was literally a 125, this would be a 4,000 carat diamond. The reason why you know this diamond is because you understand the story of it. So I began to think, what if people understood each other's stories? If I knew who you are, the second you tell me, let's make it a scenario. Let's say your house catches on fire, you have to evacuate. And I tell you, you know what? You can only take one thing. And you come out and you take, let's say, a spoon. Let's say the spoon. You come out your house with a spoon. And I said, why'd you take a spoon? And you said, Barry, you don't understand. This spoon, my father fought in World War II. My grandfather fought in World War II. This is the spoon that he used to dig himself out of the prisoner of war camp. This is the spoon that he had when he met my grandmother. And my grandmother and my grandfather got together, got married. And I am here today because of this spoon. So this spoon is a legacy to your whole family. So now, if you gave me this spoon for safekeeping and you wanted to use this spoon, let's say a neighbor comes over and say, hey, can I have some tea? Oh, give me that spoon. I'm like, no, you can't use that spoon. That's Munira. No, you don't know what this spoon is. This is no longer just a spoon. This is a representation of my friend whose grandfather went through this. And they were like, oh my God. So my point is, the more of someone's story you understand, the more their value increases.
So that brings me to a good point. Because we talk about value and stories and, let other people tell. Most people think I haven't done anything worthwhile to tell other people's stories, right? A few years ago, my uncle from East Africa, he came here, and then I was sitting with him, and I just like, how did you two meet? And he just told me his life story in 3 years. What happened was I wrote his autobiography in 5 days.
Okay.
And I wrote it and I said, you need to publish this. Although it is a published thing, he doesn't want the world to know. I don't know what he's waiting for, but regardless, but he doesn't think he's done such a wonderful thing. And when I look at my other uncles and I see their past history and what they've come across, right? I'm like, how do you do such things? It's so amazing. How do you put that in perspective to people who say, I don't have anything worthwhile to share?
Well, see, and I get that. Thank you for asking that question. I get that all the time because I do workshops all over the world, and I get that same response. Oh, Barry, I wasn't homeless. I didn't go through this. And then I always ask them. So, and literally, this was an exchange I had just a few months ago with a woman who was at one of my workshops, and she said exactly that. I don't have anything to share. And I said, oh, okay. I said, have you been married? She says, I was married. And I said, well, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Did you get married? She said, yes. I said, did you have a perfect marriage? She says, no. I said, that's the story. So are you saying you're divorced now? She said, yeah. I said, that's the story. Do you have kids? Were your kids perfect? Like they behaved, they did everything well? She says, no, of course not. I said, there's a story. I said, you're a woman, so life is wonderful for you as a woman, right? You don't have to deal with anything. No, I deal with stuff every day. There you go. That's another story. So literally in the last 30 seconds, I've already come up with 4 or 5 stories. So and what makes it, and this is where the analogy with gemstones are, even though a diamond is a diamond, but each diamond is different. It has its own identity. And so when you realize that a diamond comes from 90 to 125 miles in the ground, it requires 3,600 degrees temperature, 70,000 pounds per square inch, and it has to all come together as it rises up to the surface. And the youngest diamond is at least 600 million years old. Think about all the things that gemstone had to go through, in this case, diamonds, and that's just your life. I don't know anybody from East Africa. So his story would already be fascinating to me because he would be the first person from East Africa I've ever met. In fact, yesterday, a man from Sud texted me through Facebook and said, I would like to meet you. He's calling, this is late at night. He was in Bangladesh. I know nobody in Bangladesh. So this, I was excited. I was like, wow, I'm meeting someone from Bangladesh. He's in the Rotary Club. He asked me about the Rotary Club. So we had this exchange at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning talking about Rotary Club. Again, the more I found about his story, the more his value. So instead of just being a strange guy on Facebook, now I feel like I have a friend in Bangladesh. So this power of stories is vitally important because everything you've ever done in your life came to you by virtue of a story.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's so wonderful, right? So you started, you have a wonderful story, and you could write a book and, pages and pages of literature that you can teach people. I don't want this conversation to end. All good things must come to an end. But let's talk about how would you, when those people say, I don't have anything to say about, okay, I've gone through divorce, I've had kids and they were not perfect, and all of those questions that come on, how does a person start writing or thinking about creating this story, this masterpiece of their life?
The stories are like music. And what I tell, when I coach somebody, whether it be an individual or I do this for corporations and businesses, what I do is I take a step back, okay? Because a good story only does 3 things. A good story is memorable, a good story calls you to action, and most importantly, a good story makes you need to tell a friend. So what I normally do is I have a person just start talking to me. Okay, just start talking, and then eventually they get out of their own consciousness and they become unconsciously conscious, meaning they're just like in the zone. So if you're, let's say, your relative who's telling me about living in, all I could ask him is, so what was it like living in East Africa, like what you've explained? And then he starts talking. When you get to the point where he's not even aware of you anymore, he's just telling you, when I was a little boy and I lived here, that's how you start a story. That it's like a drum beat. You keep hearing it in your head. That time when I went through this, or when I met my husband, or when I had to get that job. Those are the stories that resonates in you. And you know that it's important because it keeps coming up for you. It keeps coming up for, when you were in the service, or when you went to college, or your child's first, when your child was first born. So start from there. Don't put the pressure on yourself like, I got to put something on the piece of paper. Just feel it. Just feel it. Like I tell my clients, if you had to talk to God, I'm a Toastmaster, so I've competed in the World Championship of Public Speaking in 2012. You get 7 minutes and 30 seconds. So what I challenge all my clients is, if you had 7 minutes and 30 seconds to talk to God, what would you say? What would you say? That's it. Peter's sitting there like, okay, you got 7 seconds, 7 minutes and 30 seconds, go. And you're like, okay, God, let me think. What would you say? What would you say? It could be something silly, it could be something funny, but that's your story. And because it came from you, then that means that even though there's 7.5 billion people on the planet, nobody can tell their story like you can, because it's your story.
That's so wonderful, because I was talking to my brother yesterday, and we were reminiscing about something that happened in our childhood. Mm-hmm. I realized that his version of the story is him looking at it differently, and me looking at it differently, because we didn't have the same version, but it was the same story that we were talking about. But it's how you say it and what you remember of it. So that makes it pretty unique, right?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's how I got to be. As far as I know, I'm the only gemological storyteller, I'll just say, in the Midwest. I could easily say in the United States. In fact, if you Google Gemological Storyteller, think about all the billions. If you Google Gemological Storyteller, my name comes up first. I mean, out of all of my name. So the way you're talking about niches. I started studying gemology. Gemology has been around since let's say the late 1800s, early 19th century, been around. There's lots of gemologists, but So there's lots of people that can tell you about diamonds and rubies, but for me, the most fascinating thing was all the stories that's involved, how countries and continents. I mean, if you talk about Asia or India, you can't even talk about India without gemstones and the Maharajas and just the Hope Diamond, all these things. And I realized in studying these books that are like this thick and all these books that I got here, right? I mean, gold and these books, there's all these stories. And I realized that no one was telling these stories. They were talking about the gemstone, but they weren't talking about the people or the stories involved. So I said, that's what I want to do. I want to tell those stories. And so when I realized that there was a relationship between appraisals and stories and people, God bless you, that's when I just said, I'm going to become a gemological storyteller. And so the whole gem hunter started from there. So I literally created my own niche because I like stories. So that's
awesome,
that's what I do. Yeah.
That is so awesome because you took the love that you had of something and you took the gem. I mean, just that one person changed your life because she wanted the stones. So let's talk about the stones, right? Which one is your best stone? Which one do you like the most?
You know, it's so funny. I get asked that all the time as an appraiser, someone who appraises gemstone. I would say, one, I love them all. Professionally, I love them all because my job is to find beauty in gemstones. But if I had to really put it down to one, I would say pearls. I love pearls because pearls is really, to really understand gemstones, you have to really see how all gemstones in women are very, very similar. Okay, as far as just the way women are, gemstones, the beauty, the symmetry, and pearls are basically like the most feminine of all gemstones, because what people don't understand is pearls, most people think that pearls are developed because sand just gets into the oyster and that, but that's not how it really works. Pearls are developed because there's a parasite, a biological bacteria that gets into the sex organs of the oyster. So it's like it's like a UTI. You can know how painful that is. So what the pearl does is protects itself from this foreign object inside of its body, and it creates the nacre on top, and that's the pearl. So out of something horrible comes something beautiful. And I just think the relationship between that really speaks to the relationship between gemstones and people, and most importantly, women, because I think God, my personal opinion is, I think God is a woman, and I think God started with gemstones, worked on gemstones to get in practice to make women. Because gemstones come in every color variety, and the same thing with women. Women come in so many different varieties, different ways of thinking. So it's not just a woman. What elements are inside of that woman to make that woman unique? And that's so when I look at gemstones, I've learned so much more about women because of gemstones.
You know, you should be a hopeless romantic.
I am a hopeless romantic. I grew up, I tell people all the time, I grew up, in fact, I have a television show that I put on Wednesdays. It's called The Gem Hunter. And just last week, I was talking about that question, whatever happened to romance? Because I grew up with movies like Forrest Gump. You know, when Forrest Gump's standing on his wife's grave, saying his wife's grave, he loved her through his whole entire life. And now she's passed on, and he's standing there on her grave, looking at her grave, saying, if there's anything you ever need, anything at all, I won't be that far behind. I won't be that far away. I mean, oh my God, that's romance.
But that doesn't happen in real life, right?
I believe it does. I believe it does, but it's rare, just like a gemstone. Just like I said, women are gemstones was like diamonds. Diamonds are not rare. Diamonds can be found everywhere, but gemstone quality diamonds, the Hope diamond, that's rare. So just like there's women everywhere. but finding the woman that works with you, that's for you, the one. Now that's rare. That's rare. So is there such thing as love at first sight? Yeah. Yeah. Is it rare? Yeah. You know, are there people who are together 10, 20, 30, 50 years? Yes. Is it rare? Yes. So part of what we have to do is understand the story of our partners. And that's what creates the relationship. That's what creates who we are, not only for ourselves, but for each other. And that's how I believe people stay together, because they love each other's stories of who that person is and what it took to make that person.
Amazing. You know, and this is such a lovely conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you.
But the thing, so then again, so you talk about pearls. I love pearls. And so, you know, I believe that pearls are the only gemstone that are not pressurized. Everything else has gone through pressure and is mined. And although pearls can be made in factories and stuff like that, but the true gem, the true pearl is, you know, it's one or two in a oyster, and it's never under a pressure. I mean, maybe when it closes its oyster, there is pressure there, but it doesn't just have to transform itself in such a way. I mean, it's just unique. But that's just my 2 cents. What do you tell people? What's one thing that you would want to, one message that you want to share with our audience?
The mission in my life is to get, unfortunately, we live in a world where there's all kinds of, people don't realize their value. They don't realize, you know, whether it be based on color, whether it be based on gender, whether it be based on where people come from. We do, but we don't. So the same principles that we idolize and we treasure in Gemstone, we don't treasure in each other. So let's say I'm in Gemstones, in gemology, the more color you have, the more value you have. Imagine living in a world where you and I, we are people of color. And it's not saying that we're better than colorless people. It's just that we have our own value. You know, we have our own value. So I want people to just take a step back and listen to the stories. Listen to what made me me. So if I come from East Africa, what is my experience? I come from Harlem, New York. What is my experience? What was my experience being a homeless person and being who I am today? Because I'm still that same person. I mean, the same head, the same arms, but yes, 28 years ago, you would have walked past me down Michigan Avenue. I smelled horrible. I had a beard down to here and everything else, but I had 3 degrees in science. So the only difference between that person then and now is, one, I know my story. I know my value. So that's what I'm able to tell. So I think if everybody, my wish is for everyone to know their own value. So this way it fortifies you. So when you have your boss at work telling you no, or your kids telling you, I don't have to listen to you, or whatever else, you understand why you're here. And doctors, lawyers, moms, dads, firefighters, we all have our value. And without that element that you bring to the world would not be the same. The world would be a different place. So that's what I want. What you do brings value. Someone is listening to this and saying, yeah, I wanted to do this. People who develop businesses because hopefully it comes from the heart. It's their niche. And that niche came from value in, my grandmother made great oatmeal cookies. I think there's other people that love oatmeal cookies. I'm going to make a company creating oatmeal cookies, which I may not eat it, but there's so many people that would appreciate the pleasure of eating that oatmeal cookie that came from your grandmother or your great grandmother's recipe. That's value. That's value.
So when I heard your segment, I don't know where I heard it, but you were talking about expensive diamonds and women, right? Like you said, Richard Branson gave Elizabeth Taylor a 33.9 carat
diamond,
and then the marriage didn't last. So first tell me, what is the most expensive gemstone?
Ooh, okay, the most, go ahead. The most gemstone, you just want, okay, what else? Most expensive gemstone and?
Let's start with that.
Okay, well, right now there is a gemstone. It was actually sold in 2017, and it was a 70 carat. In fact, hold on a second. Let me show you real quick. Let's go to this gemstone. Let me go to here. Here we go. This is a 150 carat diamond ring. The whole ring is a diamond. This runs for $70 million. Of course, for you, you get a deal because you know me, only 50 million. But so this is one of the most expensive gemstones out there right now. There's another one that just sold. It was a, what color was it? Oh, it was pink. It was a pink diamond, and it sold for $83 million. So right now, an $83 million pink diamond is the most expensive gemstone.
But it's always a diamond.
It's not all, no, it's not always a diamond. Actually, rubies and emeralds command higher prices than diamond. It's just, again, color. So a red diamond, diamonds come in every color of the spectrum. But when you start getting into the fancy colors, the blues, the yellows, the pinks, the reds, pink and red diamonds are extremely rare because you talk about pressure. Not only does it have to go under the normal pressure that diamonds go through, but a pink diamond or red diamond goes through another level of pressure and temperature that deforms. It deforms the structure of the diamond in order to make a red and a pink diamond. So imagine that in people. Here is something, how many people we've met in our lives or heard about who they had some type of physical deformity or something, they couldn't read, they couldn't write, their one arm was shorter, and yet they still rose to amazing heights despite whatever going to, or because of. Michael Phelps comes to my mind. Michael Phelps has really big feet, and he was ADHD, and his mother couldn't stay. He drove her mother crazy, his mother crazy. So she said, "Why don't you go to swimming lessons just to work off all that energy?" And today he is the all-time winningest Olympic champion of all times. Why? Because his mother was like, I got to do something with you. So from that came his calling. And all of us have that. We just got to take the time to to hear the music and find our story.
So in all of this, the stories that you've looked at the rarest gems and you've looked at the most expensive. Who is the most rarest of the women out there? Because you're a hopeless romantic.
Yeah, well, let me just say something real quick. It's, to me, I don't have a problem with women receiving such beautiful gemstones. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor, her first husband gave her a 29 carat diamond. Richard Burton gave her a 33 carat diamond. They broke up, got divorced, remarried. The next year, he bought her a 69 carat diamond. So yeah, exactly. My problem is if you give that type of jewelry, that type of symbol of your love, then the relationship should last a lot longer than a year. It took this diamond is at least 1 billion years old. It took 2 years to decide to even how to cut this diamond. This diamond is 1 billion years old. It took millions of years to find it, and you give it to a woman, present it to a woman as a representation of my love, and the relationship is over in 8 months. That's a problem. That's a problem. So let's say in most very expensive women who received, Mariah Carey, a few years ago received what was the size of her stone? I can't remember this. Oh, it was, I know it cost $10 million. $10 million diamond. I think it was 40 carat. No, it was 25 carats. $10 million. Literally, the relationship lasted less than a year. They never even got married. They just were engaged. So I don't understand. I think the same principles that you use to buy that gemstone, to understand the story of that diamond, should be the same principles that you put into understanding the love of your life. Who is that woman? And what's her value?
So what you're saying is that when you go researching for a gemstone, stop researching about the gemstone, go research about the person that you're going to give this gemstone to.
Yeah, or at least understand her story. Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton got engaged with a guy whose name was also Paris. He knew her for 3 months before he presented her with a 24 karat diamond, which cost $5 million. $5 million. And then the engagement lasted 8 months. He sat her down with 15 of the world's best jewelers company in the world. He let her pick out whatever ring she wanted. She picked out that ring. He paid $5 million for the ring, and the relationship is over 8 months later. I've taken college classes that lasted longer than 8 months. What do you mean? So you know about this gemstone. Think about it. Think about it from a man's point of view. If you invested in a business and you tell me, Barry, this business is going to cost you $5 million, I would check out where it is, how many customers, how long it's been around. I would know everything before I gave $5 million. But yet here you invest $5 million on a woman. I'm not even going to say whether she deserved it or not. The question is, you didn't know enough about her for the relationship to last longer than 8 months. 8 months is like, and then, okay, so then not to mention $5 million and the relationship is over.
So it's not all about the money. It's always about the value.
It's about the romance. It's like, do you love this woman? Do you love? Remember that scene? And you saw it. Remember that scene in Forrest Gump when Forrest Gump is now Jenny. That was her name. He was describing. Jenny's on her deathbed, and Jenny's like, were you afraid in Vietnam? And Forrest Gump says, well, and he starts describing his adventures. He just starts describing a lake, a mountain lake that was so beautiful, you didn't know where heaven started and where the earth began. He's describing millions of lights on the water and when the sun comes down in the bayou. And Jenny looks at him and says, I wish I was with you. And that's when he stopped and literally looked her in the eye and said, you were. Oh, that's love. Now, if Forrest Gump gave Jenny a 24 karat diamond, I would say no problem, because the love that he had for Jenny far exceeded $5 million. It would be priceless. So that's the only thing I'm saying. Take that same time to understand the story of the person that you love. In the same effort that you have created the business to be able to afford a diamond like that, and more importantly, to give this representation of your love to this woman. And women, when you understand how special it is to find a woman that works for you. I've been married 3 times. Well, 2.5 times. I found 3.
2.5 times.
Because I was in a relationship with one woman for 10 years. So that counts as the marriage. That counts as the marriage, as far as I'm concerned. But what I can say is, you hear guys saying, oh, my first wife was this. No, I've met 3 beautiful gemstones in my life. I was fortunate enough to meet a woman that was a sapphire. I met a woman that was a diamond. In fact, my second wife, she had green eyes, so she was an emerald. So I, as a gemologist, found 3 beautiful gemstones in my life. Now, it didn't work. It didn't work. But I'm not going to take away the beauty, what I felt when I looked at that woman. She was like, all 3 of my wives were just like a commercial I saw a long time ago for Obsession. Calvin Klein's. The guy looked at the screen and said, she was like a fever from which I shall never recover. I heard that when I was 12 years old. Literally, I'm downstairs in my basement. The obsession, you can still Google, you can put it on YouTube, look it on YouTube. It was a guy, it was a black and white scene, and the guy's looking at the camera. I'm downstairs in my basement, and he looked at the camera and said, "She was like a fever from which I shall never recover." And I thought to myself at 12, what kind of woman would intoxicate a man's soul where he describes it as a fever from which I shall never recover? And you're okay with that. That's love. That's romance. So as a hopeless romantic, my job is to remind women all over the world that there still are men who walk outside when they're walking down the street or open up car doors. But you better believe, if I give you a $5 million ring, I know your shoe size, what color undergarments you wear, what's your favorite color. I would be able to tell if you put a strand of hair on your head separately. Like, did you change your hair? Oh my God, all I did is put a part. I would notice everything because it's like music. I would know all your notes all the time. So there you go.
Awesome interview. Where do people find you?
You can basically on Wednesdays, this Wednesday, I'm on a show called The Gem Hunter, and you can go to Diamond Factor Experience, the Diamond Factor Experience. A good Toastmaster friend of mine called named Barbara Beckley. She started this show. She invited me on as a guest. So on every Wednesday for about 25 minutes, I'm talking about different aspects of gemstones and precious metals. In May, I'm going to have a 1-hour show, so I'll have standalone shows. But if you have any questions about gemstones, precious metals, fine jewelry, you can contact me at The Gem Hunter, THE, Gem, GEM, Hunter, standard spelling, at mac.com. So The Gem Hunter at mac.com. And I would love to answer questions and about romance, about how to understand the significance of gemstones, colors. You know, the hard thing, last thing I'll say is the thing that makes gemstones, diamonds and rubies and sapphires wish they were women. You know why? Because a diamond is always a diamond. A ruby is always a ruby. Women can decide whether they want to be diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sapphires, pearls on whatever day they want. You wake up one morning, you're like, you know what? I feel like a ruby today. And you put on your lipstick and your hair and ta-da, voila, you're a ruby today. And as your man, I'd have to say, you know what? She's feeling like a ruby today. Okay, I understand, okay? And that's all part of it. That's all the beauty of what I do every day. It is amazing.
Amazing. This has been such a wonderful, enlightening experience.
Thank
you so much. We should have you back on our show so that you can talk to people here. We'll see how response is and then we'll talk. But ladies and gentlemen, look at this man. He is a hopeless romantic, a homeless guy with 3 degrees, a Marine before that, and now a hopeless romantic with, you know, a lot of knowledge on gems. And you're right, I haven't heard of anybody doing that. I know 3 or 4 people who are gemologists, but they never take it to the next level. So what are you guys waiting for? Take it to the next level, because you don't know what skills you have and what interest may spark you. And again, I say that one person who may change your life is standing right across the street from you or around the corner. So find that person, make that leap. And if you haven't found that person, you just found Barry and me on this show, because you know what? Our stories, our lessons, our values are teaching you to take your story, your values to the next step. Jump. People, you are unique as the gemstones that he's describing, but just jump and do what you've always wanted to do, because that, my friend, is going to take you to the next level.
Let me just leave you that one last quote, and it's actually a homework assignment. There's a movie called Amadeus, the story of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who to me talked to God. There's a scene early on in the movie where the antagonist, Salieri, who actually was a real person, he describes Mozart's music. He had known of Mozart. Everybody did at that time. Mozart started when he was 4 years old. He created concerto when he was 4, a symphony when he was 7, a full-scale opera at 12. And in that scene, Salieri's reading Mozart's music for the first time. He was a composer himself. And he described, he said, at first it was nothing, just the pulse. Basset horns, bassoons, like something from an old rusty squeeze box. And you hear the music playing in the background. And then suddenly, high above it, an oboe. A single note hanging there, unwavering, until a clarinet took it over. Sweeten it to a sound of such delight. This isn't a music from a performing monkey. This was a sound that I had never heard, filled with such longing, such unfulfillable longing, that it seemed to me as if I was listening to the voice of God. And I thought at that moment, imagine if all of us lived a life where we were creating a sound that no one has ever heard. You may not be famous, you may not be rich, but live your life, tell your story, let the world hear the sound that you have created. And whether the whole world knows you or not, someone will hear your sound and it will resonate with them. And then you will live forever through them, their memories of you.
Awesome.
Voila.
I don't know how to say that. So with that, I'm going to say, have a wonderful week.
Have a
We'll
wonderful
see you next week.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group.